My daughter said, only special people are invited to my wedding, after leaving me off the guest list. I simply replied, I understand. A week later she called, panicking, Mom, rent and tuition are due. Did you send the money? I softly said, oh, didn't I mention? Dedicating 2 decades of your life, every single fiber of your being, to someone, only for them to look you in the eye and casually erase you from their most important day. What do you do when the person you raised, the one you loved unconditionally, decides you're not special enough to even attend their wedding? I just asked about the date, a simple question about my adoptive daughter, Casey's, wedding. And she looked at me, with this self-satisfied little smile, a shrug, and then she said it, that was yesterday. Only for special people. It wasn't an, oh, I'm sorry, we wanted to invite you. It was something small, just at City Hall. Not even a guilty silence. Just that phrase, like a butcher's knife, delivered with casual disdain. I was rinsing my coffee cup at the time. Nothing dramatic. No broken cups, no overturned chairs. I just stood there, holding that cup like a fool, staring at the same little girl I taught to ride a bike when she was 6. The one who used to sob on my shirt when her hamster died. The one who left me crayon drawings that said best dad stuck on the refrigerator. Only for special people. She repeated it, this time lower, as if I were the one who didn't understand. I slowly put the cup down. I see, I said. That was it. I didn't insist. I didn't cry. I just walked past her in the hallway. She was still typing on her phone, utterly shameless, offering no explanation, just sliding her thumb across the screen as if I were background noise. And that's what no one tells you about parenting, especially when the child isn't yours by blood. There's no safety net for heartbreak. You give, and you pray the foundations will hold. But when they decide to remove you from their life story, it's like you never even existed. Erased. Not even with malice. Just with a casual, shocking disregard. She'd moved out a few years ago, but her wedding preparations have been a revolving door of requests. Can you be my guarantor for this rental agreement? Dad, do you think we can use your backyard for the engagement photos? I might need help with the deposit for the celebration venue. And like a damn fool, I helped. Every single time. I thought it meant something. That night, I went upstairs, sat at my desk, and opened the folder on my computer labeled Casey's wedding. Photos she'd emailed with ideas for venues. A PDF scan of the receipt I had paid to reserve the very venue she ended up using. I selected the folder, pressed delete, and then emptied the trash. No drama. No last words. Just, gone. The funny thing is, she didn't even notice. The next day, she sent me a meme by text message. A meme. A corny joke about marriage and pizza. As if nothing had happened. As if I hadn't been absent from the most important day of her life. I replied with a thumbs up, and then, I stopped replying altogether. You know what they say about boiling water? It reveals who is pasta and who is potato. Casey, she thought she was the chef. She thought she was in control. But the second I stopped being the guy who always answered, always paid, always forgave, she didn't know what to do with me. No, not right away. That would come later. First came the silence, then a confusion that slowly grew, and behind her confusion, a growing arrogance. I imagined she thought I was sulking, that in time I would get over it. But I wasn't sulking. I was calculating. She didn't know that while she was celebrating her little moment of special people, I was sitting in front of an old metal security box in the back of my closet. Inside, I kept every check stub, every tuition statement, every rental agreement, the documentary proof of who exactly made her independent life possible. She didn't know that I had a spreadsheet titled Casey Finances Support Program. She didn't know I had already added a tab called Closure. And she certainly had no idea that I had absolutely no intention of continuing to finance someone who could look me in the eye and say I wasn't special enough to attend her wedding. That night, I poured myself a whiskey, leaned back, and finally, at last, I let the anger slide off me. Like a heavy coat I no longer needed. I had spent 20 years wrapped in it. It was time to let it go. Not for peace, not for healing, but because I had a better use for the silence that was to come. The house was too quiet. Normally, it is. But that night, it felt surgical, like the silence of a hospital wing after visiting hours. I sat in my office with the lights off, except for the lamp on my desk, and I stared at the wall of photos. Casey, almost 5 years old, with a gap in her smile, proudly showing her first report card. Casey, almost in high school, arm in a cast, a big grin and a marker in her good hand. Casey, on the porch of her freshman year college dorm, hugging me as if she wasn't sure if she should be excited or scared. There was one of us at a father-daughter breakfast, where she made me a paper tie with Dad written in glitter. I kept it. It's still in the bottom drawer. I didn't cry. I didn't feel like crying. I felt displaced, as if I had been evicted from a life I built. I wasn't her father. I was a subscription service that she forgot to cancel. I turned to the laptop. The screen lit up, showing the spreadsheet I hadn't closed, her finances. Every payment I had made since she turned 18 was documented there. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I always believed that when she was successful, I would be proud to know that I helped build the launchpad. Rent, $200. First quarter of college, $3,500. Textbooks and supplies, $100. Car insurance, $850. Deposit for the wedding venue, $2,000. Non-refundable. The numbers became blurry. I blinked. Then I opened a folder I hadn't touched in years. It was titled Contingency Account Closure. I created it when she was 15, right after the first time her biological mother reappeared. A thin, manipulative woman who would show up every few years like an oil slick, drop a few poisonous words, and then disappear again. Casey had almost cried for her once. I remember being outside her bedroom door, listening to her sob, "She doesn't even know me." And I almost went in. Almost. But I didn't. Because a part of me already knew that one day, she would choose that woman. Not for logic, not for love, but for blood. Because people crave origin stories more than they crave stability. I looked at that folder now. Inside were all the bank details linked to her. Every automatic payment. Every account I created in her name. I had a plan to close it all. Not out of spite. For clarity. My therapist once said that people reveal your value in the roles they assign you. I always thought I was dad. It turns out, I was funding. I didn't touch the phone. Not a message. Not a warning. This wasn't revenge. I wasn't angry enough for that. This was math. Balances. Roy. I started the process. Step 1. Unlink the automatic tuition payment. She had just finished midterms. There would be a pause before the next payment window. Good time. Step 2. Schedule the closure of the joint credit card. She had only used it for emergencies. She hadn't realized it was in my name. Step 3. Change the utility bills for her apartment, currently linked to my automatic payment bank, to manual. Let the due date knock on her door for once. Every box check gave me not pleasure, but calm. It was the first time in years that I didn't react emotionally, without guilt, without overcompensating. Just a constant and silent dismantling of dependence. She would feel it, but not right away, and not loudly. That was the point. Because if she had chosen to exclude me from the moment that defined her new life, then I was choosing to exclude myself from the machinery that sustained it. I didn't slam any doors. I didn't post a bitter status. I didn't even tell anyone. But that night, a man who once thought that parenthood was a promise realized that it had been treated as a contract, and one of the parties had breached it. I closed the laptop, stood up, stretched, and for the first time in a long time, I slept. As if I wasn't waiting for a call that never came. Sunday brunch. A rustic French place in a gentrified corner of the city. Edison bulbs, expensive eggs, too many mimosas. Casey and her new husband, Jeremy, were sitting at the head of a long reclaimed wood table, surrounded by people who now qualified as family. Not that I had been introduced to most of them. I recognized her biological mother across the table. Stiffer hair, longer nails, a posture that dripped theatricality. At last, she could play the role she abandoned decades ago. I wasn't invited, of course, but I saw the photos. They were all over Jeremy's aunt's Facebook page the next morning. She accidentally tagged me in a photo, then untagged me. But the damage was already done. Or maybe, the clarity. The brunch took place a week after the wedding. I knew it had happened. Almost. She hadn't even bothered to hide it. But the tone of that brunch, the dizzying confidence with which they erased me from the timeline, that hit me in a different way. Jeremy stood up, mimosa in hand, wearing that kind of unconfidence that only men who marry into a legacy believe they are entitled to have. "To the family that always believed in us," he said with a smile. Everyone applauded. "Casey," she stood up, glass in hand, and added, "to the people who have never failed us." Her biological mother nodded smugly, as if the phrases had been rehearsed. Maybe they had been. Maybe this whole brunch was less a celebration and more a rewriting of history, while the ink was still fresh. Casey looked around like a queen inspecting her loyal court. Everyone was smiling. Everyone, except one. Jeremy's Aunt Joan. I think her name was sitting halfway down the table. Older than most, more observant. She clapped politely, but something in her eyes didn't match her hands. While the rest launched into laughter and inside jokes, she discreetly took her phone out of her purse and checked it. I know because in one of the brunch photos, her screen is barely visible. Zoom in, and you would see that she was browsing old social media posts. My posts. A birthday card that Casey drew for me when she was 7. A photo of us in a canoe. Me standing in the rain at her high school graduation, soaked but smiling like an idiot while she held the diploma. She opened one more image. It was an old one. Casey holding a moving box, me behind her in a campus parking lot. She had written, "I wouldn't be here without him." It's funny how quickly people forget their own words. Joan locked her phone and then unlocked it again. Her fingers typed something. A short message, a link, maybe a screenshot. And she sent it. Not to Casey, not to the mother, to someone else. That's the moment when something changed. Not at the brunch, not at the party, but outside of it. The story had been too perfect, too curated, and someone at that table finally noticed the stain in the corner of the picture. Meanwhile, I was at home, alone, drinking burnt coffee and trying to decide whether to clean the garage or throw my phone in the river. I didn't know about the toast until later. I didn't hear the words in real time, but I felt them in the way Casey didn't send messages. In the silence of a girl who used to call me every Sunday, as if it were a tradition. I was her Sunday tradition. Now, I was a censored paragraph in a memoir that she rewrote with a different father. I didn't get angry. I didn't fume. But I did stand up. I went into the living room, took down a picture, and turned it over. On the back, written by her, was a message for the only man who was always there. I stayed at it for a while. Then I slid the frame into a drawer. Some memories you keep, others you bury alive. But what I didn't know was that while I was trying to forget, someone else, someone unexpected, had just started digging. Joan was not a gossip. She was not a meddler, or one of those annoying aunts who hover too long around family drama just to fan the flames. She was the type who observes. She notices, files things away. A librarian of uncomfortable truths. And something about that brunch didn't sit right with her. She had no interest in the matter. She really had no reason to care. But that toast, that moment when Casey laughed and raised her glass to the people who never failed us, it activated something in her. Not a memory, more of a question that had been quietly hovering in the back of her mind, waiting for a crack in the noise. Later that night, alone in her apartment with a cooling cup of chamomile, she opened her laptop. She wasn't sure what she was looking for, just following a hunch. The same way you double-check the locks even though you know you closed the door. She opened Casey's old Facebook albums. Still public. Surprisingly, people always forget to lock the attic of their digital life. One album stood out. It read, "The Best Dad in the World." It was from years ago. Photos of Casey with a man that Joan hadn't heard mentioned even once the entire wedding weekend. A man she assumed had passed away, or was estranged, or maybe was out of the picture in that vague way that people use when they don't want to explain. But he wasn't just in the picture. He was the picture. One photo after another. Him holding the handlebars of her bike as she learned to ride. Him bandaging her scraped knee. Him dropping her off at college with a crowded duffel bag slung over his shoulder. Birthday parties. School plays. A photo of the two of them in the snow, building what looked like the worst snowman ever built by human hands. She opened another tab and searched for his name. It didn't take long. LinkedIn. All donation records. A GoFundMe from years ago where he had helped her pay for a classmate of Case's to study abroad. Anonymous donation, but she tagged him in the thank you post. Joan leaned back, her hands clasped under her chin. Then she opened her email. She typed her brother's name, Greg, the groom's father. Subject, did you know this? The body of the email was short. Did you know that her adoptive father paid for her college, her apartment, the wedding venue deposit? That man who raised her never got a mention, not once. Look at this. She attached screenshots. One of the graduation photo, one of a bank transfer that Casey had publicly thanked him for 2 years ago, tuition paid in full. Then a final attachment, a photo of Casey at 8 years old, hugging him with her arms around his neck. The caption read, "He says is not my real dad, but real always means blood." She pressed send. Greg replied 2 minutes later. Wait, he did? I thought she was independent. That's what her mother said. Joan didn't reply immediately. She was still looking at Casey's engagement photos, the one she had sent in a group email that included half the planet, but not the man in those childhood photos. Joan typed, "So, who exactly was special enough to be invited to the wedding?" There was no answer, because really, what was he going to say? The truth was starting to itch under the surface. A man had built an entire foundation, and these people were dancing on the roof, pretending he wasn't holding up the structure. Joan wasn't angry. Not yet. But she was curious. And curiosity, in the right hands, becomes a knife. She clicked on Casey's recent photos. Not a trace of her father. No mention, no tag. Erased. And something about that seemed to Joan more than disrespectful. It was deliberate. As if someone had decided a long time ago that he didn't fit the image Casey wanted to project. Not in her brunches. Not in her fairy tale wedding. Not in her life of social climbing. But facts don't disappear just because you hide them. And Joan had just started flipping through the pages they tried to tear out. The call came on a Tuesday morning. I was pruning the bushes in the backyard. I remember because my hands were in the dirt when the phone vibrated, and for a brief moment, I thought about letting it go to voicemail. Casey's name appeared on the screen. Not a hello, Dad. No context. Just hello. The rent was returned and the tuition is due. You forgot to transfer it. Not a greeting. Not a trace of warmth. Just an order wrapped in a question. as if I were the payroll department and my delay had inconvenienced her busy social schedule. I wiped my hands on my jeans and answered calmly. I didn't tell you. I was retiring. A pause on the line. Tell me what? I could hear the frown in her silence, a slight snort of confusion, as if she had misheard, or maybe thought I was joking. She let out a small laugh. Tense. Nervous. Fake. Okay. But seriously, the rent is due and the tuition portal is giving me a countdown. Can you do it while I'm on the phone? I looked at the garden, the tools at my feet, the morning sun rising against the wooden fence I built with my own hands when she was 10 and wanted a dog. I remembered how she would sit there with a paintbrush in her hand, helping me stain it a color she called dusty earth. I had been dust, and she had moved on. Casey, I said slowly, I told you, I'm retiring. But why now? She asked, her voice a little sharper, trying to slip into that old tone, the one she used when she wanted a favor in high school. Is it because of the wedding? I didn't answer. She pressed on. Come on, we've always handled this like adults. You know you can count on me to pay it back. That phrase was so absurd that I actually smiled. Count on you. I repeated, not mockingly, just stunned. Casey, when have you ever paid me back anything? She fell silent, and then defensive. I didn't mean it like that. I mean, I appreciate everything you've done. You know, I do appreciate. The kind of appreciation that forgets your name in the toast. The kind that doesn't include you on the guest list. The kind that never mentions the man who pays the bills when listing who always believed in us. Look, she continued, I just need a little help this month. We're tight after the wedding, and Jeremy hasn't received his full commission yet. I didn't say anything. I let the silence breathe. She filled it. You're being mean. Still nothing. You're punishing me. That's what it is. You want me to apologize so you can feel like you have the upper hand. And there it was. The default defense of people who think that love equals obedience. I took a deep breath. Without anger. Without emotion. Just fed up. I'm not punishing you, I said. I'm removing myself from an equation that doesn't need me. She tried to laugh again, but this time the laugh broke in the middle. Okay, I get it. You're angry. You've made your point. She quickly added, but just this once, can you transfer the rent? I don't want to deal with the landlord on top of all this. I'll fix it later. I hung up, and then I blocked the number. Not with anger, with liberation. You see, a line is not always drawn with a scream or slammed door. Sometimes it's silent. A single decision. A calm boundary, finally imposed. After years of being nothing more than a concept, Casey would soon realize that the money was never automatic. It just flowed like water until the man who built the well decided to leave, and the tap ran dry. The next call came 2 days later. Different name, same tone. This time it was her biological mother, Sabrina. A voice I hadn't heard in almost 5 years. Not since the last time she showed up unannounced and left a trail of perfume, lies, and judgments behind like cigarette smoke. Hello, she said with fake cheerfulness. Long time no see. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. I doubt that has ever stopped you, I replied dryly. She let out a thin laugh. Okay, fair enough. Look, I'm just calling to talk about Casey. Of course. There was a pause. I imagined her biting a perfectly manicured nail, wondering how to start the performance. She started with something soft. They always do. She told me that you've been distant, that you've canceled things. I didn't answer. She's very upset, she continued. She thinks you're punishing her for misunderstanding. And there it was. The framing. Not a betrayal. Not an abandonment. Just a misunderstanding. As if forgetting to invite the man who raised a daughter to her wedding was a scheduling error. I leaned on the kitchen counter, looking out the window at the bird feeders swaying in the breeze. A cardinal landed, pecked once, and flew away. Even birds know when to leave something empty. I'm not punishing her, I said slowly, measuring each word. I'm correcting. Silence on the other end, then a snort. Oh, come on, she snapped, dropping the warm act like a broken mask. This is way beneath you. She was nervous. Okay, she didn't think you would want to come. Nervous. I repeated expressionlessly. So, instead of asking, she erased me. She didn't erase you, she insisted. She just didn't want to create an awkward situation. You know how complicated it's always been between us. Ah, there it was. Us. The hidden grudge finally rearing its head. This isn't about us, I said. This is about her rewriting her life without the only person who never abandoned her. She's young, said Sabrina, suddenly adopting a maternal defense. She makes mistakes. You're the adult. You're supposed to be above that. No, I said. I've been above that for 2 decades. I financed her, supported her, raised her, guided her, protected her, and accompanied her at every stage of her life. She made a decision. I did, too. She's your daughter. She's your daughter, too, I said. But you didn't pay for her college. You didn't stay up all night when she had bronchitis at 7. You didn't sell your boat so she could take a summer course abroad. You only showed up when it was convenient. And now you sit at the wedding table. You're resentful, she spat. I didn't say. I'm fed up. That ended the call. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't hang up in anger. Just static. Silent. Restless. And then nothing. That night, I sat at the dining room table with a legal pad and a laptop. Automatic payments. Cancelled. Utilities. Unlinked. Tuition account. Disconnected. The backup emergency card. Removed. Her gym membership. Her student union fees. The Amazon Prime account she used with my name. Gone. 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 I went through each step. Not with joy. Not with malice. But with a strange calm. As if deleting an app one hadn't used in years. No emotional residue. Just a quiet satisfaction. And all the while, I kept imagining that brunch. Casey's glass raised. Her eyes lit up. Laughing about the people who never failed us. Maybe she believed it. Maybe she convinced herself that I wasn't family. That I was logistics. Well, logistics can be cancelled. And for the first time in her life, she was about to learn the difference between unconditional love and unconditional access. It started with something small. A declined card at the campus bookstore. Casey barely noticed. She just assumed it was a machine malfunction. She used another one, paid, and moved on. But then her gym key fob flashed red instead of green. The receptionist smiled uncomfortably. Your account shows a payment issue. It's probably just a billing error. Casey shrugged. She was a newlywed, still radiant from the wedding, still in the cloud of the illusion that adulthood was just freedom with better lighting. Her husband, Jeremy, hadn't noticed either. He was too busy trying to meet sales quotas to qualify for that elusive bonus that promised to level them up. Then the email from her school's billing office arrived. Subject, action required. Unpaid tuition. She opened it, skimming over the bold text. Her loan portal, which she never really understood because she never had to, now showed an outstanding balance of $1,275. Payment pending. Tuition flagged. It was then that the first glimmer of panic cracked her indifference. She called the student finance office. She was passed from one person to another. They confirmed that the registered sponsor's automatic payment had been removed. She dialed again. Called her mother. No answer. Called Jeremy. He answered. Hey, baby, what's up? Something's weird with the university stuff, and my card, and I got a strange message from the landlord this morning. Jeremy paused. What kind of message? He said the rent was returned. Returned, he repeated. But I thought your father. She fell silent. Casey, he said, more sharply now. I thought you said your father took care of this. Her voice dropped. He always did. Jeremy sighed. Well, then call him and have him fix it. We'll figure it out. They got in the car and drove to my house. I wasn't there. Or maybe I was. But the lights were off, and I didn't answer the doorbell, or the knock, or the second knock. Jeremy even tried the doorknob. Locked solid. They left. Back at their apartment, Casey tried to use her bank card again. Declined. She checked the tuition portal. Still unpaid. The doorbell rang. It was a landlord. Hi, Casey. Sorry to stop by, but we haven't received the rent. I just wanted to check if everything is okay. She smiled weakly. Yes, just a bank mix-up. I'll sort it out today. Okay, he said, unconvincingly. I just wanted to let you know. The policy says I have to start the late notice paperwork if it's not paid by the end of the week. She closed the door and stood there, staring into space. Jeremy came out of the room, holding his phone. Well, he hasn't answered, he said. You left him a message. No, he's not answering, and I think he's blocked me. Jeremy blinked. Wait, what? She nodded slowly. Jeremy's expression darkened. This is bad, Cass. Very bad. We don't have money for rent and university right now, and I won't get my commission for another 6 weeks. I didn't think I would have to worry about that yet, she said. Her voice was smaller now. He always took care of the payments. Yes, but why would he stop? She couldn't answer, because no one had warned her. No one had prepared her for a world where I wasn't the automatic solution, where I wasn't the invisible current that propelled her forward. Her safety net was gone, not cut, simply removed. And as she stood in her apartment, realizing that her life was built on a credit that she assumed would never expire, the quiet truth began to sink in. There was no plan B, because she had already burned the only one that was the plan. And now she would have to pay the full price for pretending that I didn't matter. Joan didn't act quickly. That wasn't her style. She wasn't one for impulses or confrontations. But once she saw the pattern, once the toast, the photos, and the silences fit together, she couldn't keep pretending. Something about it all seemed ugly. So she waited. She waited for Casey's artificial glow from the wedding weekend to fade. She waited until her phone vibrated too many times with Casey's vague updates, which always avoided the real issues. She waited until Jeremy, her nephew, called her to say, Hey, Casey is a little stressed. I don't know what's wrong. Something about her father being weird. That was a door Joan had been waiting to enter. She called him that night. No preamble. You need to know who you've married. Jeremy paused. What? Joan was in her study with her reading glasses low on her nose. Documents spread out on the table as if preparing for a trial. She had done her homework. Screenshots, printed emails, old social media posts, matching dates, bank transfer confirmations, even a thank you post that Casey wrote in her senior year of college. I wouldn't have made it without Dad's help. Grateful beyond words. Joan's voice remained calm, practical, without accusation. Just the truth. Her adoptive father paid her college tuition, all of it, in cash. He paid her rent for years. He helped co-sign her car, her apartment. I even found the receipt for the wedding venue deposit. His name is on it. Jeremy didn't speak. She blocked him, Joan continued, or at least ignored him. She didn't invite him to the wedding. She didn't mention him at the brunch. Hell, she didn't even toast him. She just erased him. Silence. You married someone, he said slowly, who cut ties with a man who made her life possible. Not because he hurt her, not because he failed her, but because he didn't fit the image she wanted. Jeremy cleared his throat. Are you sure about all this? I have the records, Jeremy. This isn't gossip. It's numbers, receipts, timestamps. Another pause. Then in a low voice, he said, she told me her father was distant, that they were never close, that he didn't really support her emotionally. Joan exhaled, but she didn't laugh. She didn't even raise her voice. She told you what she needed you to believe to justify what she did. But if you want to know who raised her, who fed her, who answered every call for help, look at who stopped paying the bills last week. And suddenly her whole world started to crumble. Jeremy's voice sounded smaller now. Why are you telling me this? Because I was at that brunch, she said, her tone finally hardening. And I saw you toast the people who never failed you. And I saw a man who gave 20 years of his life to your wife be treated like a footnote. Jeremy said nothing. You should know who you married, said Joan. Not the version she presents. The version she buries. I need to think, he mumbled. I hope so. She didn't say goodbye. She just ended the call, closed her laptop, and turned off the light. Miles away, Jeremy sat alone on the edge of his bed, the phone still in his hand, staring at the floor. The version of Casey he thought he knew, the strong, self-made woman, the loyal daughter who overcame adversity, now had a crack running through her. A deep, sharp one. And once you see the fracture, you can't stop seeing it. And although he wouldn't say it out loud, not yet, something stirred in his stomach. Not anger, not heartbreak, just disgust. Not for the lie, but for how easily he had believed it. He didn't slam the door. He just said, I need to get some air. He took his keys and left. No wallet, no purse, no jacket. He just left, as if he didn't expect to be long, but somehow already knew he wasn't coming back. Casey stood there for a full minute after the door clicked shut, looking at the grain of the wood as if it could whisper something to her. Her phone was already vibrating in her hand, as if by reflex, trying to get him back. First one message, then another. Jeremy, just talk to me. This is getting out of hand. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell everything. Please come back. No answer. He called straight to voicemail. By midnight, she had tried 3 more times. The last voicemail was silent, trembling. Please. I didn't know how to explain it. I thought it didn't matter anymore. At 2:17 in the morning, there was a knock on the door. It wasn't Jeremy. It was his mother. Sabrina entered without waiting for an invitation, holding a full leather purse and a lot of moral superiority. Her voice was sharp from the moment she opened her mouth. I told you this would happen if you didn't control the narrative, she said. You let that aunt snoop. Now look, he's gone. Casey didn't answer. She just stood in the kitchen with her arms crossed, her phone clutched in one hand. Mom, she said in a low voice. Why didn't you tell me what he did for us? Did you know he paid my tuition? Did you know he covered the rent? You let me go into that wedding pretending I had made it on my own, while he... Her voice broke, while he was paying for the celebration venue. Sabrina's mouth flattened into a cold, unapologetic line. Because I didn't want to share the credit. The phrase hung in the air like a lit match. I raised you too, she said. Do you think he's the only one who sacrificed? I didn't want people to think he was the hero and I was just a woman who gave birth and disappeared. But you did disappear, Casey retorted. You came back when it was convenient. Sabrina didn't deny it. You told me he didn't care, that he was controlling, distant, that he didn't show up for your custody hearings. Sabrina's face tensed. I needed you to trust me. No, said Casey, raising her voice. You needed me to rewrite history so you wouldn't look like the villain, so he could be the disposable one. I didn't force you to block him. I didn't force you to exclude him from your wedding. No, said Casey, the tears starting to flow now, hot and furious. You just made it easy. They stood there in the dim light of the kitchen. 2 women, both realizing that they had built a narrative with so much care that neither of them knew anymore what was true, except for the consequences. That was very real. Jeremy still hadn't come home. Her tuition was still unpaid. Her rent still overdue. And the only man who had silently held every piece of her life together had simply vanished. Not with anger, not with drama, but with precision, like a pillar removed from under a stage that no one knew needed it. The show had gone on for years, and now the floor was caving in. It arrived on a Thursday morning, slipped under the apartment door like a ghost seeping in with the cold air. No stamp, no return address, just her name in famed capital letters centered on the envelope. Casey bent down to pick it up, the way someone approaches bad news. Slowly, but without illusions. Inside, a check. $1. She looked at it, confused for a moment. A joke? A scam? Her mind searched for context until she saw the note, printed on crisp ivory paper, in the same unmistakable, formal, neat typography as something prepared for a trial. Payment for services rendered. 2 decades of unconditional love. Now settled. There was no signature, just a logo at the bottom, discreet, but impossible to ignore. The foundation for forgotten parents. Established in honor of those who gave everything and were thanked with silence. She read it twice, then again, and again, until the hallway around her began to tilt. She fell to the floor, her knees buckling like a puppet whose strings have been cut. The check fluttered beside her. The letter remained clutched in her hand, her fingers marking creases in the paper as if trying to break it without breaking it. She didn't sob at first. No, she just sat there with her mouth open, gasping under the weight of a pain she had not earned the right to avoid. It was so deliberate, so incredibly calm. He hadn't just left. He had immortalized his absence. He had turned it into a cause, a movement, a message, a silent monument to every man who raised a child not born of his blood, only to be eliminated from the final act. And she had no answer. She had no one left to call. Jeremy hadn't come back, not even to pick up his things. The hum of the refrigerator was louder than that of the phone, which hadn't rung since Sunday. Her mother had also fallen silent. She had no more advice to give, no script to read now that the audience was gone. Casey sat there, her eyes red, her palms pressed against her face, as if she could contain the collapse just by pressure. She whispered his name once, as if saying it could rewind something, anything. But there was no answer, just the distant hum of the city outside, oblivious to the breakdown of a woman who thought that loyalty was disposable, who thought that love was a faucet she could turn on and off. She had spent years believing that she was the center of someone's world, and now she didn't even orbit around him. The $1 check lay there like a tombstone. The proof that some debts can never be paid, only settled. And some people, when they finally let go, never come back. What about you? Have you ever had to draw a line like this? Or been on the receiving end of such a cold cut? What would you have done if you were me? Let me know in the comments below.